It was the first monument that I've treated by not first doing an on-site inspection. Due to the time constraints for the rededication, we had to look at the photographs of the monument back in Connecticut, come up with a treatment plan, arrive here with all of our equipment, and then discover that the sculpture actually had some other major issues that were just unforeseen. While walking around the monument, it became apparent very quickly that the bronze was actually overhanging the stone pedestal. The sculpture sits up on the pedestal 18 feet or so. The footprint of the bronze matches the granite so precisely that any overhang actually entails quite a circumference of the bronze itself. So 32 linear inches were migrating off the stone. We actually went up on the scaffold, shook the monument, and it appeared to be rotating, so I assumed that there would be interior pins holding it in place and maybe even lifting it to take the pressure off the stone right at the points where the bronze meets the granite. Well, we actually started the treatment, but I knew I had to look in the interior, so we drilled a hole and then with the borescope looked inside and found out that the bronze sculpture wasn't anchored at all. It's the first sculpture I've ever encountered that had no anchors whatsoever. Quite honestly, the next big storm actually could have caused the sculpture to topple. Once we saw that there was no pinning at all, there was absolutely no question. It was a safety hazard for the people here at the cemetery, and obviously threatened the sculpture itself. So there was just no question it had to come down. The remarkable thing was how quickly it happened. Within 3 days, they actually engineered the drawings, fabricated the piece, lifted the object up, secured it, re-anchored it. It was remarkable. I've never seen anything come together so quickly and actually so beautifully. So it was brilliant to come up with this inner plate. International Chimley, they carried out the design beautifully. It was really engineered in a brilliant, brilliant way. The sculpture itself is actually balanced very well. Some sculptors give care in thinking about how objects will be moved once it leaves their studio. This piece actually lifted beautifully with 2 single basket straps, equal length, perfectly level. It was a wonderful, wonderful pick, and we were really fortunate about that. The sculpture had been patinated before the move, so we were very, very careful to cover all the surfaces to make sure that they wouldn't get dirty or greasy in any way. First, when we arrived and we thought it might be stable, we began our treatment process, which involved using a high-pressure water system for removing loose corrosion. We made sure all the larger openings were sealed with lead, and the small openings we sealed actually with a bronze impregnated epoxy. Then we were ready for really one of the more entertaining parts of the process, and that's to try and patinate the sculpture to retain its aged quality. From the very beginning of the project, Joseph Dispenza made it very clear that this was the entry to the cemetery, and this entry should represent what you're going to find within these beautiful grounds. And it was very important that they sort of maintain the aged quality, but still have it maintained. And so we took more of a preservation stance rather than restoration. So we tried to preserve the green appearance of the object. In order to do that, we actually have to patinate the surface a deeper green, because when it gets coated later in this process, it would become much too dark. So the patination process is vital for 2 reasons. It adds a slight protective finish to the surface. It gains a more attractive appearance once it's coated, but it also evens out a lot of the irregularities. So we patinate the surface by heating it with a propane torch, quite hot actually, and then spray on a patina, and it actually induces green corrosion with the bronze surface. And so it's a very stable surface when we're finished. Once the sculpture was patinated and we really retained a beautiful even green appearance, the final coat, protective coating, was applied, and we selected an acrylic resin. This clear coat will protect the surface from all pollutant contact in the future, well, at least for the life of the coating. And since we wanted to try and maintain as much of an sort of untouched, aged quality about the sculpture, we decided to use the acrylic resin. It's an amazing piece. The sculpture quality is fantastic. The sculptor Hamilton did a remarkable job. The amount of detail is phenomenal, and that was just slowly during the conservation process, all that detail reveals itself, and it's quite remarkable to actually see the sculpture bring itself forth so you can see the whole entity as the sculptor originally designed it. And in that also getting a glimpse of the character that the sculptor had created.